guys, welcome back for another video. Today, the EJK Tuner showed up. So I'm gonna do a quick unboxing just to show you what comes in the package, how it's packaged, yada, yada, yada. Tuner. Form factor is very small. Looks like a credit card. Maybe even smaller than a credit card. The associated wiring, Let's take this to the end. There's a couple of pigtail, a couple of connectors there, and ground. So ground wire, connecting wires, and some zip ties, small zip ties. Looks like a sticker. Thank you guys for that. That's awesome. Velcro for mounting if you wish to use that. A little caution sticker here. Let's see what that says. Make sure you test the black ground wire first before installing the connectors. Good to know. Good to know. Let's set this down. Let's see what the directions look like. Nice. Very clear. You know, nothing extravagant, pretty much. I mean, it's nothing super fancy, but it's very legible. I've had things and the directions weren't even legible. All that's very clear and just generic install instructions. So we'll see how generic they are. Okay, so that's the unboxing. We'll get to the installation next. All right guys, so we're gonna mount the tuner back here on top of this fender well somewhere, probably down here, I suspect. There is a nice little bolt right there that's attached to the frame. So I may ground it right there, or I may ground it over here. I'm not really sure yet. I've seen it done both ways on YouTube videos. You can see I've already done my snorkel delete. Haven't really run it yet. Haven't ridden it without the snorkel. Haven't really ridden it with the pro circuit pipe or the pair valve delete, quite honestly. I rode it stock once and now I'm making all the modifications. So we're gonna have to get down to our fuel injectors, which I think, I don't know how well. So if you can see, I'm gonna try to put my flashlight on it. So that is the injector right there. You see those wires coming down. I don't know if that's in focus or not. We're gonna have to unclip that. And the EJK tuner will be plugged into that injector. So we gotta get to that. It's a little bit of a difficult spot. And I'm not really sure. This one back here would have been a lot easier, but we're going for that one. So we'll see how difficult that's going to be. Doesn't look too bad. Okay guys, so I'm trying to get to this injector and it's not crazy difficult, but it's not super easy either. So number one is knowing which one that you're supposed to take off. So as a point of reference, now I moved over to the left side of the bike because it's a little bit more accessible over here. I've got my flashlight jammed up in there so I can see it. Now you'll see this injector, I've just got it started. I'm gonna try to get my screwdriver in here to point to it. So I've just got it started lifting it off. You can see that little bit of gap right there. So it's starting to move up. And what you have to do is on the top of that injector, you have to, I'm gonna try to point to it with my screwdriver again if I can. So if you press right there on that injector, and you'll see it a little bit better once, well, hold on, I'll show you. Here's the EJK, and so that's what you're talking about. This is the same type of clip. So you have to push right there, and it raises that plastic up and releases it off of that. So you have to push down with your hand, with your thumb, and then I use my screwdriver at the base of that injector and just pushed it up as I'm pushing in on that. Maybe that makes sense. If you watch a couple of these videos, hopefully it will make sense. So I'm just gonna see if I can't go ahead, since I've got it loose, go ahead and try to push it. Yep, it came off. So there you go. So now it's loose. So now I'm gonna go on the other side and start working on getting the wiring routed down to that injector. And just so we're clear, this will go back onto the injector, and then the injector that we took off is going to get plugged into this. So we'll close the loop by doing that. All right, so in running your cables, I think I'm going to maybe put a zip tie. I don't like that edge right there. It's not sharp, but I don't really care for that. So I'm gonna try to find, maybe I can just loosely hang that. And I can maybe put it around here. I can put it around this little spot on the frame and just let it hang there so it's not like tight against it. And then I use the factory clip here, and all you gotta do is just take you see how that just popped out? And then I just ran, and there's the cable right there. I included it. So that's nice that you've got that option. And then it just runs down to, you just got to bring it down to your injectors. And once again, that's the a little bit of a challenging part, not too bad. All right, so this was the connector that was the factory connection to the fuel injector. This is the EJK connector, and that just slips on, it just clips in. Same, like I said, you just push this up and that will pop off. So we've closed that loop. Now I just have to get the EJK connector on that injector, and I gotta find it in this little bit of mess of stuff. So let me see if I can do that. All right, guys, so, here's the connection we're dealing with. It's right there. If it'll focus. Drop my tools. So what I did was I used this to just kind of fish it on top of the connector, and then use a screwdriver to push it down because my hands are too big to get in there. I used that to put it on top and just push it down. I used a screwdriver to push it on down there. If you'll see let's see if I can get in here. Right there, that's the factory connector to the injector, and that's already connected to the EJK Tuner. So that's done. We're hooked to the injector. Now we need to ground it. And the instructions talk about grounding it to the battery. What you're gonna see on this is the original owner, he said the factory battery died on him after he put the Tusk radiator fan on. And so he disconnected the radiator fan. And those are the two connections you see right there. I have not reconnected it because I'm not riding it enough right now to keep the battery charged because the weather sucks. I really want to put a lithium battery on this bad boy at some point. So with that many different connections going to the battery, I may just do what others have done and ground it to the frame. I think that's probably what I'm gonna do, so I don't have so much stuff running to the battery. So I'm gonna show you kind of what I've ended up with. So Obviously the controller, the ground is connected down there to that bolt. You'll see the ground wire coming off right there. That's the ground wire. And so that attaches to the frame directly. I think I'm cool with that. I've seen a couple other people do that. And then the extra cabling for the injector connectors, I've just kind of pushed it down amongst some of these other factory cables. This is a factory cable. I just want to make sure my seat can go on with no issues. I don't want to kink that up. Probably the most challenging part of this, quite honestly, was getting a zip tie around the factory injector connector that attaches to the EJK. And it's going to be really difficult. I don't think I'm going to be able to show it to you. But just know that that connector, there's the zip tie. You can see it right there. I wanted to keep that off of the engine case, because obviously that's going to be a heat source, and it's one thing in the directions they talk about is keep all this cabling away from the exhaust system, engine, any kind of heat sources, stuff like that. So it took me a little bit to fish that zip tie around the frame and to connect it to that extra cabling to hold it back away from the case. Other than that, the installation was pretty straightforward. So now I'm going to move this bike outside and start it up to make sure I've done everything correctly. All right, so as you saw, we had solid green on the left side. According to the instructions, that's a proper installation, so we look like we're good to go. I got to figure out the tuning part. I need to dig a little bit deeper into that. I think Enduro Bandit has a really good video on him changing his settings, so I'll probably go reference that, and if I think about it, I'll try to put a link to his video in the description below. But really, it is pretty straightforward. Depending on the size of your hands, you know, how accessible some of these switches are, that's the only unknown for you. So my hands are pretty big. I had to use a couple little tools to snake some of the cables in, but pretty simple. Look forward to getting it out tomorrow and ripping it. So that video will be coming next. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please hit that like button. Please consider subscribing. I'm trying to grow the channel. Appreciate it. And remember, in order to live a happy life, you got to live an active life. Let's get at it.